So I'm waiting for a friend of mine who is actually my senior, like a lot senior than me in my department, but they're going to defend their dissertation next week. So I'm invited for a lunch all of a sudden. It's almost like a farewell. So yeah, it's interesting.
I got a black and white mocha. I've never tried this before. This is basically dark chocolate and white chocolate with espresso and milk. And I obviously got oat milk mocha. And these are their cold beverages. And today it's really, really cold, so I don't want anything cold. Let's see if they have hot ones here. Yeah, they have the hot ones here. My one is not listed here, but yeah, mine is more of a, I think, holiday feature. And there's a Tesla store right there. Teslas look good. And there's Loft, and of course, I'm at the Nordstrom Cafe, so yeah, that's the place I got the mocha from. And yeah, so I'll sit here and I'm going to read a research paper actually. So yeah, I'm gonna enjoy this coffee and read my paper. So I came to the mall today. This is Nordstrom, and I am getting coffee. Black and white mocha. I'll probably go and sit somewhere here. And I got some stuff here. Some important things. So my phone battery died at the mall at that time, and well, my friends arrived in time and we went to get lunch. We went to this really nice Chinese buffet called hibachi. I think hibachi is a Japanese word, but the buffet is Chinese. Most of the buffet items are Chinese. Oh no, they do have sushi. They have sushi, but I think their specialty mostly is Chinese, I think, because most of the items are like General Tso's chicken or orange chicken and other things that I usually find in Chinese restaurants, but they have one sushi section. I don't like the sushi at this place so much, but I really like the American Chinese food they have. I mean, I know all of my Chinese friends say that the actual original Chinese food is much better than American Chinese, and I also agree because I've eaten their own food from their own kitchen, which is really nice. But I somehow really like the American Chinese food, like orange chicken and General Tso's chicken. They are very high in calorie and like really fried and have a lot of sugar in them. So they're not really healthy, but they're kind of tasty. So I really like them. And we basically celebrated this friend come seniors defense that's coming up. They're defending on Friday, and they're actually defending in their 9th year of PhD, I think. Yeah, so it's quite a long time, and it's very common actually in the US. People do their PhDs for a very long time, and for good reason actually. One, we also TA or RA here, so it's not just the PhD dissertation research that you're doing. And also a lot of people, at least from where I'm from, don't know the system of PhD in the US very well. So what happens is, in India at least, most PhDs are about 3 to 4 years where you work on your PhD thesis. Correct me if I'm wrong. It could vary from discipline to discipline and university to university. But in the US, by and large, you have to do a solid amount of coursework. So despite you having master's degree, you still have to do a PhD coursework, which is mandatory. And I think now that I'm applying for jobs, I can see why it's so good to do that coursework. Now I feel I'm trained in so many things in such a good way that I can really apply for a wide range of jobs. So what happens, at least what happens in my department, so this also depends from department to department, even within the same discipline. So within linguistics also you have different kinds of system in different universities and different departments. So in my department is called the Department of Linguistics and Cognitive Science. Here, when you enter in your first year, you have to take five mandatory courses. So in your first semester, you have to take something called Phonology 1, which teaches the basics of phonology, and Syntax 1, which teaches the syntax basics of a subfield of linguistics called syntax. And then in the second semester, which is also in the first year, you have to take Phonology 2 and Syntax 2. So these four courses are the core linguistics courses, which are mandatory. So you have to take them to get the degree ultimately. And the fifth mandatory course is psycholinguistics. So these five courses are mandatory, and you have to take it within the first 2 years. So phonology 1, phonology 2, syntax 1, syntax 2 can be taken in the first year itself, so first semester and second semester, and some people take psycholinguistics in their second year. I took it in my first year itself. So in my first year, I completed all the required courses. And in addition to that, so each semester you have to take 3 courses. So in my first semester in first year, I took Syntax 1, Phonology 1, and Psycholinguistics. So that way I had 3 courses. And in my second semester, I took Syntax 2, Phonology 2, and Field Methods. So that constitutes my first semester. And some people who do not TA or teach, that is, they also end up taking 4 courses per semester because they have a bit more time in hand, because we have to do teaching, which takes up a lot of time. You have to do lesson planning, you have to make slides, you have to teach the class, you have to make exams, you have to grade the exams. So that's a lot of workload, and undergraduate classes tend to be really large, like it could be something between 100 to 120 students sometimes. So that's a lot of work, and you also get TA duties, or you could have TA if you are the instructor. So that goes in the first year. Now, in my department, you need to take 51 credits of coursework, which is a huge amount of courses, because each course is worth 3 credits. So to finish 51 courses, most of the time people go on until 3 years, that is like 6 semesters or even 7 semesters sometimes, because you can only take so many courses in each semester, right? So you're not allowed to take beyond a certain number of courses. So you can't say like, oh, I'm going to take 5 courses and try to finish up all the 51 credits as fast as possible. You can't. And also because each course is so heavy and so intense, that if you take too many courses together, there's a high chance that you won't do well in a lot of these courses. So you have to be very careful and very loyal to the classes that you take, so that whatever you are learning, you're learning it really, really well, and you can do very well ultimately at the end when you do your research. You can implement these things that you're learning. So this goes about coursework. Second important thing are the qualifying papers. So qualifying papers are something like mini dissertations. So they are like mini but large original research projects. And in my department, you have to do 2 of them to be able to qualify as a PhD student, as somebody who is qualified to start their PhD dissertation. So these 2 qualifying papers take a lot of time, because they are really like mini dissertations. They have to be solid journal publication level papers. So usually people start this so you have to do 2 qualifying papers, so in 2 consecutive years. So usually in the second year we start the first qualifying paper, and in the third year we start the second qualifying paper. So I also started my first qualifying paper in my second year. I in fact started working towards my first qualifying paper from my first year itself, from my second semester. I started writing the IRB proposals. IRB proposal is like when you have to collect data from human subjects, like that is like you collect data from human beings. You have to get approval to do that research from a designated formal governing body. They scrutinize your research plan and how you're going to do the research, whether it's ethical, whether you're going to harm your subject in some way or not. So they test all those things, and you have to pass that exam. And it's like an exam. You had that there is actually a CITI program which teaches you about how to do ethical data collection, and we have to do that. We have to pass that exam and then apply a whole proposal to the review board. There's an internal review board which does this review of your research. So I did all of that in my first year itself. So yeah, I had a really good start to the program. So then I started collecting my data in my second year. So yeah, so we start working on our projects as fast as we can. A lot of people start a little later, but I wanted to start early because I don't know, I'm very passionate about linguistics research. Anyway, many people are, but it's circumstantial. I just had a project in mind, so, and I got the right support from my department, so I could start quite early. And that project was a very big one because I actually collected data from more than 20 subjects, and it was a behavioral study. That means I had human subjects and they had to respond to stimuli. And this I started sometime, I think I started data collection in October of my second year, and completed all the data collection by the end of November. Yeah, it took 2 whole months, and then I started applying. I started writing abstracts for different conferences. So this is also something, like when we do these qualifying papers, because they are supposed to be very high level papers, they are expected to be journal or conference level. So I started preparing my abstract to send it to a conference that was happening in Australia. And it's a very big conference in our field. It's a huge conference. It's actually not just us. We all, like, that conference also has a lot of engineers and people who work with acoustics. Yeah, it's a huge conference, and it was a big deal, and it was in Australia. So it pulled in a lot of researchers from everywhere in the world. So it was a big deal. So I was working very hard to make my paper really of that level. So it was like a very competitive situation for me, because it was my first research project as a PhD student, and I actually wanted to get into that conference, and I did. So by December I was pretty much really done with all the data collection and analysis and everything, and then I started writing the actual qualifying paper in that January, the following year's January. And by the end of summer I was actually done with the qualifying paper. And that summer I also started with my second qualifying paper. And one thing you have to understand, that when we are doing these qualifying papers, we are also simultaneously still doing the coursework, which goes on until third or fourth year. So while doing all these conferences and journal level study and experiments and papers, I was also taking classes. So that makes things extremely heavy. It's very difficult. And also I was teaching, so it's a lot of things. They like, somebody who's not experienced it to that level might not understand the intensity, but having perfection in every level of these work, every level of these work related things, it's like your paper has to be top notch. You have to get straight A's in all your courses, and you also have to teach well and grade well and on time. So it's a lot to keep up with. So I was also doing that, and then I started my second qualifying paper, which was also a dream project for me, because it was about articulation, and I'm very intrigued, and I love studying how we human beings produce speech sounds. So articulatory phonology is about how our vocal apparatus move and how they produce speech sounds the way they are, and how the brain actually controls all of this, because phonology ultimately is about a mental representation of sounds, and how that mental representation translates into all the motor control of all the muscles and tongue and everything to produce the sound the way we do in each of our native language. It's thrilling, and I love finding out so many things about this whole field. I read tons of papers, and my paper itself was also addressing a very big phonological theory in the field. So it was a dream project, and I loved working on it. It was huge. It went on for almost 2 years. Like, I know people in India sometimes do a whole PhD, or even it's for 3 years, but my qualifying paper went on for 2 years, because the data collection process is very complicated for articulatory phonology, because you actually use something called as EMA, electromagnetic articulographer, and you put those electromagnetic sensors inside the mouth to actually see the velocity of the tongue, or how much the tongue is displaced to kind of produce a certain sound, speech sound, and whether it's touching the teeth at the back, or the alveolar ridge, or the palate. So it's a lot of work. And even the data collection process, the data collection with the electromagnetic articulographer takes something about like 4 hours. One of my subjects even stayed for like 6 hours in the lab with me. She was so nice. I am so grateful to her for helping me by being my participant in the experiment. And she was so fearless, because it can be a bit intimidating when all those things are put in your mouth, but she was excellent. I absolutely love her for doing what she did for me. And yeah, so that took about 2 years. And then, so by then I was actually almost at the end of my 4th year. And then my coursework had ended, so I did not have to take any more classes after this qualifying paper ended. But then I started working on my dissertation prospectus. So see, at the end of your 4th year, you actually start with the dissertation, with something that in India, or I guess in the UK or Europe also, the moment you enter the PhD program, you start your dissertation research, right? But we actually start the dissertation project at the end of the 4th year. So, and then I defended my dissertation proposal. It's something like you have to design a whole experiment, your study and everything, and you have to run a mini experiment. Like, the whole dissertation's mini version has to be done for the dissertation proposal defense. And that I did last year of October. And yeah, I think, no, I did it on September 27th. And I know I remember I was the first one in my cohort to do it. So I felt really good, because it was very stressful. And being an international student, there's always a stress of immigration problem. Like, you can't just keep going on and on. There's a lot of like immigration related issues, especially for Indian students, because I guess I'm not too sure, but there are lot of delay for Indian students in immigration for some reason. I'm not very sure about these things. But for me, I was always like on my toes, because I knew I have to be on top of everything so that immigration issues don't come on my way of progress in research. So yeah, then so we have to defend our dissertation proposal sometime at the beginning of 5th year, because at the end of 4th year you're actually done with the qualifying papers. So yeah, so I used the summer to develop my dissertation proposal, and 1 month of I needed 1 month to actually find the date for the proposal defense, because you actually have to have the whole committee come together on one day to meet for this defense. And with everybody being busy and having very busy schedule, it's hard to come up with a common date. But anyway, I just required like a month. That's not a big deal. I made progress in the dissertation anyway. So then from then actually you start your actual dissertation PhD research. So you see, by then it's already 5th year. So I am right now in my 6th year, so I did 1 year of complete dedication to my dissertation project. That was all of last year, and now I'm about to wrap up. But this semester has been very, very much dedicated to job applications, and job applications in the US for tenure tracks or postdoc positions require a lot of academic documents that are fresh. It's not like you can submit old things, so you have to submit a research proposal, a research statement, so that outlines your background. You have to tell them what research you have done before and what kind of program you are planning to develop if you get the job. And I have so many plans already developed in my mind, so I write about them, and my research statement ends up being pretty long. And also the thing is, because I did a lot of side projects in addition to my qualifying paper, so I actually have a lot to talk about, so that makes things a bit long. And I was also a research assistant at some point in the phonetics lab, which is quite a unique situation for me. Not a lot of people get both teaching and research assistantships, but I did, so I'm very fortunate and grateful to the department for believing in me and giving me all these opportunities. And so, yeah, I have this research assistantship experience as well, which I put into my research statement. And a lot of my future research plan and research program development is kind of based on the fact that I have these experiences, and they're going to help me develop a successful research program in the future, whichever role I get, whether a postdoc or a tenure track assistant professorship. And we also have to give teaching statement, which is also a very important thing that you talk about, your teaching philosophy, how you plan to teach your students, and what kind of courses you want to teach, and how you plan to develop them. And these are also like very heavy duty essays, because you really have to write very strong proposals. And another one that's very important is a diversity statement. And I really like writing this. Like, I remember when I started writing diversity statements, I was not very confident about it. I didn't know what to write, but as I started writing it and reflecting upon my own experiences, I started feeling that it really humbled me, and it really changed me as a person. I think I started thinking about things that I never thought about before in terms of diversity, like human diversity, not and also not just in the US, even in my society, like how everybody should be included, how diversity should be celebrated, and everybody should get equitable opportunities. These things are things that we don't always talk about or think about when we are doing our own research and are so engrossed in the science itself. But while writing this proposal, I think I evolved as a person, and I feel very grateful that I don't know what job I'm going to get, but I'm grateful that I had these experiences to kind of reflect upon myself and understand what the world is, and it's not just me all the time. So yeah, I think that was a very good experience for me. But anyway, also while doing all these things, we do multiple conference presentations, because we and conference presentations are not just conference presentations. They are basically us sharing our work with the discipline, with everybody else in the discipline, with the field, with everybody who's interested in progress of the field. And we get so many good feedback to work on and make our study better. Even like every constructive criticism adds so much value to our study. So I always gave a lot of priority to conference presentations. So I really did my first conference presentation at the beginning of my second year, which is like really early. And it was an incredibly rewarding experience, because I got a lot of support from a lot of professors and a lot of experts in the field. And I really feel very grateful that everybody took so much interest in my study. And that kind of gave me a lot of encouragement and motivation to go on further with, presenting at conferences. And then I just thought that, every final paper or term paper that I do, like all these coursework that we do, all of them have the final paper is a research paper. All of them have the potential to become a big, journal level paper, a journal publication. So I made sure that every paper that I do from each and every course that I take, I'll make sure that all of them are so good that they can go to a conference. And luckily, a lot of them did make it to a conference, and I was so surprised because I also worked. I took field methods classes. Field method is something like you go to a field and collect data from an understudied language. It could be understudied, it could be non understudied also. There's a lot of debate about what field research is in linguistics, but uh, by what the term actually conveys, like field methods, like what are the methods of data collection or research when you go to a field, that is, you go to some place and collect data from uh, a place where people speak completely different language, a completely different language from you, or something that, or a language that you know partially or to some extent, but it has not been reported before. Say for example, if I work on Bengali, I can go to Calcutta or West Bengal and collect data. That would be my field research, but it's not a language that I don't know. I am native speaker of Bengali. Or if I collect um, data from Hindi speakers in India, that would also be field research, but it's not that I'm unfamiliar with Hindi. I know Hindi. But we also, like over here in the US, they teach us by bringing a, speaker of a language that we have not studied before to our department, and that person is the language specialist who helps us with understanding that new language. So for us, that was Quechua, and the language expert who came to our department came from Peru, and the dialect that he spoke was called Apurimac. And Apurimac Quechua is spoken in a region called, it's a small region in Peru called Apurimac. So I collected data from him, of course, phonetic, phonological data, because I'm more interested in phonology. Yeah, we collect. So I designed an experiment. I thought we've been attending his classes for a while, and we noticed certain patterns in their speech with some basic speech recordings, and then we dive deep into one aspect that really interests us and design an experiment that is properly controlled with opposing factors, and then we go back to him and ask him to uh, record more words or sentences or conversations um, related to that specific thing that we want to study. So I did that for Apurimac Quechua for the field methods class. It was just another coursework in our course, and I went to a conference with it and it got published. So like, yeah, I've got these whole small many kinds of publications like this. I actually also worked with my previous advisor, for who I was in the phonetics lab as a research assistant, and she worked on a language called Majumba, which is spoken in Cameroon. And yeah, she also presented it in Australia, the conference I went to, and that paper was published. So yeah, I got another like, I got these really, I got very lucky that I got connected with these amazing professionals in the field who really exposed me to so many amazing things, because otherwise I really work only on like my language or English and things like that. Like, there's not much diversity. And also in one of our courses, my advisor gave all of us an opportunity to work with one understudied language that we've never heard before, never spoke about in class or anything. And she asked us to find a native speaker of that language, any language that we want, but that language has to be unknown to us, and could, if it's understudied, even better. So me being an international student, I was connected to a lot of international groups back then, and I had a friend from Sri Lanka who was a native speaker of Sinhala, and yeah, I got a chance to work on Sinhala as well. So it's so cool. So I took an independent study, and I collected some data from her, and Yeah, that was a really, really cool study, and enjoyed it so much. So I'm really thankful to the professors and my advisors and my current PhD advisor who really think of these very cool ways to come up with language research. Otherwise, just generally people don't really know what linguists actually do. So yeah, I've been meaning to make a video about that, and I'll probably make one today. So yeah, that's actually why PhD takes so long, like because you there are many requirements. It's not just you go up and do one PhD research, but they train us and prepare us in such a way that by the time we actually do the PhD research, we are already quite experienced and exposed to the ethical practices, the conventions, and methods of research in such a way that the dissertation itself becomes a very high quality research project. So, yeah, that's why it takes so long. It's not a very fast process, like it's not like a 3 or 4 year program, but and actually, if you think about it, we take much lesser time to do our actual PhD research project compared to many other programs, because your actual like my actual PhD project, research project, the actual PhD experiment and the study is only about 1.5 years duration. Like it's been a year now, and I'm going to graduate in spring, so it's actually like really short. It's not that long. Like people think that, oh, PhDs will take 4 or 5 years. Like yeah, they do, and in the US it takes quite long, as I said. But it looks like it's very long, but the actual PhD, we are very efficient and very fast that way. So yeah, so I guess that's the same for the other disciplines too, like not just linguistics. I think it's true for chemistry and I have friends in chemistry, physics, and education department, and computer. And I don't have any computer engineering PhD friends, but yeah, my closest friends are from or biological sciences. Yeah, chemistry, physics, biological sciences, and education department, and most of them have this kind of a system. So yeah, that I hope answers a lot of questions about why it takes so long to complete PhDs in the US.